電機と天才トリップ・ホーキンスが世に送り出したマルチプレイヤーだ。
It's a new experience.
それは全く新しい体験。
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Episode. Here, we're continuing the series of 3DO Doesn't Suck, and I'm here to convince you why. And if you can't tell already, we're taking a look at Blade Force, released in 1995. And I do think this is probably the most impressive 3D game ever put to the 3DO, and it does rival some of the early PlayStation 1 and Sega Saturn games in my opinion. Before we get far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But fair bit of warning, I am giving this a little bit of an assist. I'm running the CPU clock speed at 1.5 multiplier, so it is running at a little bit faster frame rate. While I don't think the frame rate of the original game on real hardware is bad whatsoever, I see a lot of people complain they don't want to play the game because they don't like the frame rate, which means you can solve it with a simple toggle in Opera if you so wish. But this game is just showing the power of what the 3DO could do, both from a design standpoint as well as a 3D standpoint. This is a complete open world game as far as the level is concerned. It loads in all at once, and until you get to the next level, you're never going to see a loading bar. You have all of these different objects rendering in 3D at real time, and you have them attached to an extremely competent, fun, and entertaining third-person shooter. It's just one of those things. When people say the 3DO had ugly graphics, you just point to this game and you tell them no it didn't, and if they still believe it, that means they just want to hate the 3DO and they don't have any opinion on whether or not it can look good. I'm not saying you're going to love this type of game. If it's for you, awesome. If you don't like a third-person shooter, then you're definitely not going to find anything to love here that you wouldn't love in any other game. But as we fly around the world of Blade Force, just watch this in motion. The swaying of the camera, the real-time swing, and physics of your movement. You do have momentum to your speed. And you will see that there's all of these different collectibles, power-ups, fuel, health ups, different weapons, and objects you need to shoot while you're in the game. It is an absolute action-packed, intense blast in a helicopter, just flying around shooting everything. And as we get further up into the sky, you can just see the draw distance for a console like the 3DO is doing quite a good job. But as you drop down and you don't see the draw distance as much because you're focusing more on the ground, you really couldn't even tell this was drawing polygons in the distance if you didn't hear me talk about it. That's how good the 3DO could be in the right hands. This was developed by Studio 3DO, which was an in-house development company for the 3DO company, so if anyone knew how to handle the hardware, it was 3DO's own developers. And don't forget, these were very small teams as well. This was not the same massive development effort that somebody like PlayStation would put into a first-party game. The 3DO company had to be a little bit scrappier, and when you get games like Blade Force, you realize that with a mastery of the hardware and architecture, you can put something up on screen that rivals first-generation PlayStation 1 games all day long. Now as we bump around into some walls here, it does take a second to get used to the controls of Blade Force, but when you pick it up and you start flying around objects, blowing up different enemies, all while you're swooping in and out of the foreground and background, it just 100% works. It hooks you in with the gameplay hook, and you want to see each individual level, what it offers next, and what it's going to throw at you. Because this is quite a difficult game, and in later levels you're definitely going to be using some continues and saving your game, because you only get so many lives until you take a game over. But it's so much fun to play. I love the sensation of speed and momentum in this game, being able to elevate yourself as well as drop down into the level, and to be able to swing that camera all around. But pretty much in every level there's a main objective, and there are so many amazing cutscenes that you're going to see before you actually get that objective. The intro FMV to this game is just absolutely wild, and it's the most 90s thing you could possibly imagine, but I mean that in a really good way. If you weren't alive when a game like this came out and you don't remember FMV in games, this might not strike you the same way, but this was all the hotness back in the early to mid 90s. And all of the FMV work here within Blade Force is just spectacular. It's so much fun, it's so hokey, and it really does sell the illusion of what you're doing in the game. Let's actually hop back in. We've completed the first part of the first level, and then it just opens up. You get to shoot a key, and then you get to progress further on. Each level of this game is quite long. It's going to take you 15-20 minutes to see a whole level, and that is when you understand the layout. But I did just show you previously there is a map system, and it works extremely well within the game to show you where you've been and what you haven't uncovered yet. It gives you a goal and you need to complete it, and you get a rocking soundtrack to go along with it as well. So go ahead and listen for like 35 seconds or so, and I'll be right back. It's your classic sci-fi rock music for a game like this, and it's definitely not going to rival anything like the mastery of music we heard in the Killing Time episode, but it does work within the context of the game. And really interestingly, this game has always reminded me of one of the earliest PlayStation 1 games as well, not just in graphical style, but in the overall gameplay outside of there being a helicopter, and that is Jumping Flash, because when this came out for PlayStation 1, it was lauded for its mastery of graphical prowess. Now I am playing this on DuckStation, so I've definitely improved it, but if you put these games side by side in their original format, you can see that the 3DO could keep up with whatever the PlayStation 1 was doing as far as first-gen games were concerned. As we jump back into the world of Blade Force, again, just look at all of this going on. You can drop down into the floor, you do get texture warping, that was just part of the 3DO experience, but you can't fault it for that because the PlayStation 1 had the exact same thing as did the Saturn. It was only the Nintendo 64 that had that perspective correct texturing implemented in the silicon. But just seeing the entire world of Blade Force in front of you, you can go anywhere, you can do anything, you can shoot anything that you want. It is just insane to think that this ran on the 3DO, a console that is widely panned on the internet for being underpowered, having no good games whatsoever, and not being good at 3D. When this game came out, it basically scored all 9 out of 10s, and one publication called it the best 3D game ever made. And I would stand by that, at least for when it came out. It was definitely up there. I don't know if I'd call it the best, but it definitely would rank top 10 as far as 1995 is concerned, in my opinion. And it's so unfortunate that so few people actually played this game because it was a late stage release for the 3DO and the 3DO company. And you'll see here, if you get a little lost, you always have that map again. But you can definitely check this out today, and you 100% owe it to yourself to do so. If you have heard online, as I've said in previous episodes, that there's nothing good to play on the 3DO, if you can't tell already, that is not true, because Blade Force is 100% worth checking out. This type of open combat 3D game was so big in the 90s, and Studio 3DO and the 3DO company delivered in spades on giving you something like this. And you see again, as the camera just sweeps around in real time, it is such a convincing effect, and I even love the helicopter sprite in the screen. It is perfectly positioned, it never gets in your way, but it gives you a sensation of where you are, and it grounds you within the world of Blade Force, really giving you that momentum to want to continue forward. You can see your character and the absolute havoc they wreak with their gun, and there's so many different power-ups, missiles, weapons, cluster bombs you can pick up as well. You're constantly upping your arsenal and getting something new to use in the game, and that is just so much fun. There's a progression system as far as the weapons are concerned. You just get new things, and you get to blow up new enemies with those things, and for 1995 you couldn't complain about that whatsoever, even if you tried. My other favorite thing about this game is the FMV sequence in the beginning is absolutely hilarious, and it seems like when Studio 3DO developed a game, they got decent voice actors to actually read their lines, definitely better than you would see on PlayStation 1 or Sega Saturn for the most part. So take about 30 seconds of the intro cutscene, soak up the great 90s writing, and I'll be right back with a little more detail.
The year is 2110. Chaos, mayhem, and destruction rule. And the police are under siege. A city taken over by crime lords like Terrence Pitt. With his trigger-happy thugs, he rules the criminal underworld with an iron fist. Steel Medusa Sisters, the product of a biometallurgical experiment gone bad. Horace Cheer, this sleazy lawyer, only represents criminals. They must be stopped. With the help of Dr. Gruber, you will take to the sky, seek out your enemies, and destroy them. The fate of Mega Grid relies on your skill and courage to crush these criminal forces.
When Studio 3DO hired a voice actor, they definitely got good lines out of them, and that's the thing about Blade Force. Don't believe the internet when it says the 3DO sucks. Don't believe the internet when it says there's no games to play on 3DO. I've just shown you an absolutely spectacular game to check out, so go throw it into RetroArch, put on a 1.5 times multiplier to the clock CPU, and have an absolute blast. I'll be back next week with more 3DO, but it doesn't suck. Bye-bye.